Hello, Strange Owl fans. I am here with Darrell Hayhurst, who is the designer of Space 1889 after the first Strange Owl Games product that is coming to Kickstarter in November. We've got an exclusive interview with Darrell. Darrell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. So before we get into this, let me ask you, what are you doing now? What's going on? Where can people find you on social media? Like, who are you? Give us a little overview.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not much of a social media maven, but I do have a presence on Facebook.
Okay.
And it's mostly just random junk that I'm writing or working with. Most of my current focus right now is with Pinnacle Entertainment Group doing Savage World stuff. Oh, I know, great stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, there's kind of like this triumvirate between Pinnacle and Strange Owl and Ulysses. I used to work for Torg, you know, like,
oh man, and I love Torg.
Exactly. There's a lot of crossover between the three, and it's just you go where there's stuff to do.
That's right. That's right. So you're with Pinnacle right now. Anything fun that you can talk about there?
Yeah. Well, right now I've been doing a Lost Colony, which it's a Deadlands, in space, and that's been really fun. I've got Legend of Ghost Mountain, which is going to be returning to Kickstarter, probably early next year. I've got a lot of stuff that's under the hood that's coming out pretty much every 3 months. There's something coming from me. You guys will be sick of me. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. We got to hang out at Gen Con. It's always a great time to hang out with you there, Darrell. So let's talk about Space 1889. So how are you involved with Space 1889?
Yeah, so I was brought on by Tim to take a new run at the rules and updating the setting for moving things forward for a new edition. And as we all know, or as longtime fans know, there's been a lot of different editions and a lot of changes as it goes. So one of the challenges going forward is you have to pick one. If you're going to make a new edition, like, which one do you pick? How does that go forward? And so what we opted for was synthesis, which is, it's kind of none of the previous ones, but all of them. It's going to take elements from them and hopefully cherry pick what we thought were the strongest elements of all of them to get to that game that we all, like, a lot of us bought back in the day, like, oh my God, Space 1889, this is the coolest idea ever. All right, how do we make that today, right?
So we're calling it Space 1889 after. Why? Yeah. that was your idea. So cool. Why is it after? What is it after?
Yeah, I mean, my joke has been, it's like, well, we've been playing the year 1889 for 30 years, some of us. It's like, boy, I'd kind of like to break that December barrier and see just what's beyond, right? Because there's all this cool stuff boiling in the background in 1889, like, all like potential war and discoveries and expansion and all that. And there were two reasons to move forward. One, like, let's see what happens after 1889. And that's not unprecedented. The novel line moved beyond that too, because it takes time to move from planet to planet. So it's kind of reasonable. And then the other thing was, for new players and old players alike, where when I mentioned there's a lot of different versions and different things that happen in them, it's like, how do you be true to all of those at the same time? By moving the timeline forward a little bit, we've got a gap of years where things have changed. And then you can go back, and since we wanted to explore, like, exploration's the main thing. It's not a game about fighting. It's a game about discovery. And it's like, how do you discover something where you've got 30 years of material, of awesome stuff that we do not want to ignore? Oh, let some time pass. It's like, all right, now when you're going to those, a new player is discovering them for the first time. An older player is discovering, is it the same or have things changed? Because there's been some shakeups, in the setting. And so, like, everyone gets that, like, chance at fresh eyes to see what's there, what's moved.
Well, and I've gotten the opportunity to play in some of the play tests and run some of the play tests. And I love the fact that you've advanced the timeline, and now we're right on the threshold of a lot of my favorite times of history, right? The early 1900s, where we have wars breaking out. I was thinking of, I'm a big fan of Chaosium's RuneQuest and Glorantha, and for the longest time, it was like 1621 to 1625. Those were the years. Every time a new edition came out, all right, we're back here, but we want to know what's going on. And so with the new edition, they did the same thing. They're like, cool, we're now starting here, and we're going to just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and we're not quite an Edwardian because, man, it's a quintessentially Victorian game.
Exactly.
But the great thing is, right in the area that we're landing in 1899 is when Queen Victoria stepped down. So there's going to be an adventure around that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like in our plan, and God knows if we ever get here, right? But like the adventure's even named like "Long Live the King," so you can guess what's happening.
Oh yes.
Like around there, right? It's like, oh, we're in the Edwardian now. But, and the other thing about 1899 that I think is really exciting is when you talk about the some of the nations that exist in it, and like, oh yeah, England has space travel, and it has these colonies on other worlds, and you're looking at it through that lens. And we in America, like in 1889, that wasn't us.
No, not at all.
We did not have that, right? And in the game, it's like, oh yeah, there's Americans, but they're these weirdos in the trading posts, and they kind of like, all right, sure, right? But what changes in 1898 is the Spanish-American War, where America gets, as a result of this, kind of dumped on it all these colonies that they have no idea what to do with. Like they're the worst colonizers ever, like handed this stuff, like, I don't know, what are you going to do with it? And like, that's an interesting area to explore. Like, are we the baddies? Like, what just happened here?
That's right. Exactly. Well, let's go back. So how did you first encounter steampunk and Space 1889 back in the day?
Yeah, so Space 1889 was my introduction to steampunk. It was the godfather of a genre that didn't exist when it came out, right? And it was literally, I walked into my local game store, Things for Thinkers in Tucson, Arizona, and I saw that amazing Dietrich cover, and it just drips with the theme and the atmosphere, and you're like, whatever that is, I want it.
That's right. Sadly, we are an industry that judges books by the cover.
Oh, absolutely. But
by God, that's got me to play so many different games.
All right. And you know what? I'm lying. The more that I think about it, I'm actually wrong. My introduction to it was Sky Galleons of Mars.
Oh, yeah.
The boxed game that came out before the role-playing game. And again, that cover was so evocative. And you're kind of used to, like, Elaine, I was a kid, right? So it's like, this is an investment. You got to buy this and pray that it's a good game, right? And it was like you buy it and it's like, oh my God, there actually are Sky Galleons on Mars. And here's the map and little ships that you move around and we get to fight. It's the best. And then, the role-playing game was like, oh, and I can role-play in it too? Yes, please.
So you've been a fan of Space 1889 from the beginning.
Yes, awesome. I'm an old grognard. Sorry.
So what's your most memorable experience from Space 1889, either as a GM or a player?
Oh man, so and this is tough, right? Like I'm gonna be biased and pick one of the games that I ran, fairly recently, but also like throwback. We did a lot of the old one had a expansion called the Soldier's Companion for miniatures warfare,
right?
And we bent it in weird shapes, and broke it to where it's like, okay, there's like one little passage about the steam plated armor, okay, cool. Victorian powered armor. Bam.
That's all I needed.
Right? That's all we need. And tripods and tanks and all this stuff. So we're basically using it for essentially Warhammer 40K, but like colonial.
That's awesome.
With the colonial trappings. And that was what we played. Super fun, right? Like that was the kind of old experiences was like, oh man, stomping around with a tripod and getting its leg shot off by somebody's, field gun, that's memorable. Or Sky Galleons where it's like, all right, I'm going to ram the hull cutter and, we're going to board them. Hooray. And then you find out like, all right, this British should not do this because there's like, 100 guys under the deck that all come spilling out. I was like, all right, that's way more dudes than we've got. Run away. Get back out of here. Forget this.
All right. So you've synthesized a brand new version of the rules from taking the best parts of all of the other ones. What do you feel is the best component or best piece, best selling point, maybe, if you will, of Space 1889 after?
So to me, the selling point is everything that we do in the rules is built around creating the experience that we all wanted to have when we see the setting, when we hear about it, when you're like, oh man, Victorian spaceships and Martians, the way Percival Lowell imagined them. Cool. All right. I want to make sure that we've got spaceships, that it's something that you can use daily in the game. It's not an afterthought. Like it's a forefront thing. And it's something the characters are going to have they're going to have an ether flyer. It's going to happen, right? Like you're going to be able to travel from world to world. And and mechanically, there's a bunch of different ways that we do that, which I won't get into the weeds on. But
I love the shipbuilding mechanics that you have incorporated. Like build the ship you want and then pull it way back till you can afford it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And those are all throwbacks to Sky Galleons and Mars and the construction system on the original one. And a lot of the weights and the, we streamlined a few things with it, with, using kind of overall volume rather than just raw tonnage or whatever. But those numbers, they came from somewhere, y'all. Like under the hood, if you know what's happening, you're going to be able to build the same old vehicles, in the new one, and they're going to work out.
Now, one of the new things you've added into this edition is the Imperium Society. And here's the thing I love about it. And I'll let you talk. So give us an overview about the Imperium Society. But all right, I'm a big fan of Deadlands.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? Right? Another game that I saw the cover of, it was like, I don't know what that is. I mean, even Forbidden Lands back here, that cover of that box, I was like, I don't know what that game is. But it needs to come home with me, like right now.
I'm going to find out.
Deadlands has the Twilight Society. We have the Imperium Society here. And I love games that give us a construct for why we're doing what we're doing. So can you tell us who the Imperium Society is, why they're new, and what's unique, and what players can look forward to for being a part of the society?
Because what we try to go for, right, is a game people can play.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that people would bounce off of in Space 1889, especially if it's not a familiar genre, is what are we doing like as a group? Because it's this awesome broad canvas, but like, what are we? Are we Martian rebels fighting, the British or the Belgians? Are we, the British or Belgians, like trying to crush, these poor guys? Like, who are we? What do we do?
Right.
And if 5 different players come to the table with a different idea of that, you kind of look at each other and like, what is the game here? Like, I don't understand how to do it. And so the Empyrean Society, and Empyrean, by the way, is like a Victorian term for the heavens, the night sky. So like these are the explorers of the night sky, or the Empyrean Society. They are a mishmash of individuals, and for membership, you have to have gone to space, right? You can't just think about it. You got to have done it, right? Once you've been out into the ether, cool, you can be part of the society. And they had these clubs, and they would do missions and whatever. And the idea is they are explorers, they are discoverers, and they want what we want, which is to explore the setting.
Right.
To go find out places. And if there's some problems, absolutely, please fix them. And not everyone in the society is an explorer or a scientist. Like, there are mercenaries, there are former military,
right.
There are, any of that. But there's also Martians, right? Because there are they travel too. And there's a contingent of them in London, where the society has its main base, but there's bases everywhere, like in different nations and all that, these different explorers from different places. And that becomes our framework to say, hey, by the way, we found there's a rock, there's an asteroid that we hadn't seen before. Someone spotted it with a telescope. You've got a ship. Could you go check it out?
Exactly. And it gives you such a grounded, and the fact that the Imperium Society are the forward thinkers. So they're the ones going out actually trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
In the midst of a time that is...
They think more like we do today.
Yes. I love the section you put in the book where you gave like the Victorian ideals and virtues and contrasted them to the modern ideals and virtues to kind of help get a sense of what it would actually be like to be a Victorian.
And that was actually one of my favorite parts of the original book, was it had the original Victorian, virtues, and vices, where it's like, yeah, by the way, man, they're energetic. Like, you just can't stop them. You can't keep them down. However, you can't stop them even when
that's
they
right.
need to like pull back, right? And so, in my mind, like the fun thing, like for us, when we talk about exploring, right? Like not only exploring the physical space of this, but exploring the mental space of they've got a different attitude. And in my mind, and this is one of like the things that we pushed forward a little bit, is the Martians, they think more like modern us, with all the same virtues and all the same vices, and compare and contrast them. And I like to joke that really what we're experiencing is the Victorians, of 100 years ago met us. They would absolutely try to colonize us. Would we be able to resist them?
Yeah.
Even with our technology and all that, because we can be a little, some of our vices.
Some of our vices are very
match up to their virtues, where they can kick our butts in some ways. But that's where we can turn things around, but just like mentally exploring that in the game, like picking that apart a little bit.
I love that.
It through characters.
Now, it's not just coming out for this wonderful system that I love. I love playing the new Space 1889, but there's going to be a 5e conversion for people. And
5e is so hot right now.
I know, right? What's 5e? 5th edition? No. So what would you say if you're a 5e game master? What is the thing that you would look forward to kind of taking from Space 889 and using in your setting?
Right. Well, and the reason we did our custom rule set was to make sure that we integrated rules for the vehicles, especially the spaceships. The same kind of attention would have to go into any conversion to another system. Like, I personally think we should do Savage Worlds too. Continue on with Red Sands. We should talk to Shane about that.
We should talk to Shane about that.
And for 5e, it would be the same as like, oh, look, certain like our distinctions would map to feats very well. The stats map very well.
Yeah.
What doesn't necessarily have a space to map to that we're going to have to do the work on is spaceships, vehicles, submarines, whatever they are.
Space exploration.
Yeah. That's going to be the kind of new toys in the toy box for a 5th edition player.
Very cool. Now, if people are watching this and they're like, hey, this is awesome, how can I get involved? How can people get involved and spread the word?
Well, there is a current Patreon, which we've got the open beta test. So if you want to play it, if you want to try it, right there, right? And I'm sure he's going to put the URL,
down below
us to see. So you can join that. And even, and if you don't want to full Patreon it up and see that stuff, you can at least get updates.
Yes.
The newsletter. And then November is our target to launch a Kickstarter.
Well, Darrell, thanks for taking time to just chat with us about Space 889. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be awesome.
I'm sure you guys will hear more from me as we go. We can't shut me up about it.
All right. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next time with more interviews from fans of Space 889 and designers, both old and new. Until then, have a good one.